All right, you guys, thank you so much for coming. And I just want to start today by telling you that I absolutely love to teach piano. I have been teaching in my studio now for over 25 years. I live in La Jolla, California. This year I have 25 students. Most of them are, well, they're all children, but I have every age represented from kindergarten through senior in high school. This morning I just got a text from my senior in high school telling me that she really needs to work on her sight reading because she just had her first audition. She's going to be a music major. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a job that never grows old. For whatever reason, I teach in my garage, and this is kind of what it looks like. And I just still look forward every day to going out and sitting in my chair and having my students come in and play their music for me. My favorite age, or I shouldn't say age, my favorite type of student to start is an absolute beginner. Pretty much any age, but most of the students that I start are between the ages of 5 and 7. The course that we're going to be looking at today came out over a year ago, but we have been writing it for years. So we tested all the music. We've really spent a lot of time and thought on it. And for me, over the past year, using this new method has kind of felt like having a brand new job. So I'm excited to introduce it to you today, and you'll see if it's something you might want to try in your studio. Probably the most basic way that I get a student is a phone call from somebody sounding like, "Hi, Lori, I got your name from my neighbor down the street, and I can't wait for you to meet my 5-year-old. Because she is so talented. You will love her. And I was just wondering, how much do you charge? And do you have any openings on Thursday at 3:45? So I get those calls just like everybody else. There's my dog. I'm going to talk about him in a second. But I get those calls and I hold an interview for every student. I like to really spend some time meeting the child, meeting the parent. And I will tell you that the main thing that I am looking for in taking a new student is just a family who places value on a musical education. That's it. That's all I want. And my favorite thing about taking these kids when they're 5 or 6 or 7, I'm hoping, that they might stay with me for a very long time. That to me is the most rewarding, is when I have a family that I get to know for a long period of time. So we spend time talking. Typically, I will take the student in to meet with me, and it may be 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes. And we will talk about what school do you go to? Can you write your name for me? What do you like in school? Maybe I will take him to the piano and try and teach him a little rote piece, or ask him to sing, maybe ask him to color. Just spend like 5-10 minutes with this kid and see if I feel like I can connect with this child, and can I get through to this child? Like, is he running around the room, which some of them may be, and then I have to think about that. But so that's all we do, and then I send the child back into my waiting room and I talk to the parent for a few minutes, and the parent comes in and we talk about, one of the things that we talk about are fees. So in my own private studio, I give them a brochure. It has my tuition fee. It has a music fee. I tell them, I buy the music for you, and I just charge this one fee per year for music. They have to have a piano, and their piano has to sound something like my piano. So we talk a little just about taking care of your piano and tuning the piano, and then we talk a little bit about a metronome. And then after we talk about all of that, we talk about scheduling and a little bit about practicing at home. And I know I learned a lot. My mom taught both of my kids. And when my daughter was 5, she started lessons with my mom. And I never factored in, I knew, I'm going to be able to practice with my daughter and it's going to be great. But I never factored in that my 3-year-old would be under the piano, like tickling her while she was practicing. So it kind of taught me a lot of different things to look at. When you see a new family coming in, do you have some time? Like I asked the parents, do you have some time each day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to practice with your child. So we get started like that. In general, this is my absolute favorite way to start a beginner. If at all possible, I will schedule 2 beginners back to back, but instead of dividing the hour into 2 parts, I divide the hour into 3 parts. So we do a 20-minute private lesson for one student, and then the other student comes and we do a little mini group lesson. And then the other student stays and we do the other private lesson. The main thing that happens right here is that my student makes a friend in piano, and that is probably the main thing that keeps them going the whole way. I have a family now, and 2 of their students come to me twice a week. 2 of their kids come twice a week. I swear I don't think that they have practiced the piano now in a very long time, but they want to come every week and be with their friends. And that is an interesting thing. And before the recital and then before certificate of merit, they start to practice, and it's just kind of kept them going. So the community is really strong in my studio. I will say too, all of my students have a private lesson and a group lesson. And the way that I've been doing my group lesson, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this as we get going, but I started doing a group lesson once a week for an hour, and it is on Friday afternoons, and it's basically everybody in my studio except for the very youngest students. The very youngest students either start like that, or sometimes they don't have a group right away, just depending on how the scheduling goes. And then I try to work them into this bigger class. Like by the time they've had lessons for about 2 years, they go into this bigger class. So with that in mind, I want you to take out your books from the red package, and we're going to start by looking at one package that says free. Yes? Yes. You will be hearing about it. What I did today was, you'll get to hear me talk, but you're going to get to hear my students play. That's why I take the time to put all of this stuff up, because I really want you to see like what I do with my students. So hoping that will be clear today. The first packet that we're going to look at should say free packet. And we're starting with this A book. So I just want to give you a little bit of insight. My sister Lisa is up here on the left. My mom is in the middle, and then that's me. And I would say that picture was probably taken like 9 or 10 years ago. We used to go every year to Park City the week after Christmas. And I have 2 kids, and my sister has 2 kids, so our families and my mom, we would all go and stay in this one house, and we rented the same house every year because they had a piano in it. And the kids would go out skiing with their dads, and then the 3 of us would stay and do a lot of writing at that time. It was the only time basically in the year that we were all together totally focused at the same time. The rest of the writing that we do is just like on our own and then sent back and forth through the computer, because my sister lives in New York City and my mom lives 2 blocks away from me. So I do see her a lot, but we didn't have that much time together. When we put this book together, these are the things that we had in mind. We wanted a new method. We wanted something new music, new lyrics, new artists. We just wanted to really start fresh. And we wanted to try this all in one approach. I will say my sister is the one who was really, really for this all-in-one approach. She had this idea because she's in New York that it was going to be, such a great thing to just have one book. We have the theory inside, we have the technique inside, the performance inside, everything in one place. And I have really loved using it. It's still a lot of the same things. If you've ever used a Bastien method before, can I see how many people have ever used Bastien? Yeah? Okay. So some of the same ideas are there. Basically the multi-key approach. It's gradual in this course. I believe that this course moves at a slower pace than any of the other Bastien methods that are out there. And you'll see that we have all the new music, lyrics, accompaniments, and illustrations. Okay, so what I thought I would do would just be to give you some ideas on how to get started using this book in your studio. So I'm going to give you some ideas for a lesson plan. It might work, it might be too fast, it might be too slow, but this is just going to give you some ideas, and you can structure it around whatever student that you have there. In the past year, I have started 2 9-year-olds using this book, 3 5-year-olds, and probably about 4 7-year-olds. So the 9-year-old can zip through this, okay? The 5-year-olds can take their time, and the 7-year-olds go at about this pace. So let's take a look, just basic, pages 4 and 5. Sitting at the piano, learning the finger numbers in the right hand and the left hand. And then we introduce rhythm and music. And finally, our first piece is over on page 8, Henry the Banana. So the way that I would teach this is to have my student just rest on the piano in a loose fist, and then open up and take the thumb. So that is kind of how we get the first position. And let's sing this one together. So it says play any low black key. Henry the Banana. Come on, people. Playing the piano. And then notice right away we're talking about forte, we're talking about low. On the other side, we're talking about piano and high. Listen to a soft beat. Henry taps his big feet. So that's their first piece. And then I would go all the way to page 13, if I could get this far at the first lesson. And at this point, I would have the parent come in, and I would have them turn to the inside front cover. I want you to take a look at this. I would have the parent take out his cell phone, and I would talk about downloading this app, okay? And I'm going to be talking a little bit about this today. And I already had one question about metronome. One of the things that's really great is that we have this very accessible app. On the app, we have all of the accompaniments recorded, the piano parts are recorded, so it's even easier than using the metronome because the student actually hears a little bit as they're learning to read. So the parent downloads this. We're not going to use it right away. We're going to use it after a couple of weeks. But then the student comes back in the next week, and we're going to take another lesson, and we're going to try and get through from 14 to 25. So I want to have you take a look at page 19. I like to show you this picture. This is my sister's studio in New York. She just has the one piano in the one room, and she's on the 20th floor. And this is her teaching her student this little page 19. Quarter, where are your eyes? Quarter, quarter, rest. Quarter, 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 rest. Quarter, 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 rest.
Beautiful. That was great. Okay.
So that's probably the very first thing, just teaching the student how to count. And we typically will say quarter, quarter. You can say tot, whatever you want to say, 1, 2, 3, 4, however it works best for you. But now I want to have you take a look at page 25. And at this point, this is the end of the second lesson. The student goes home and practices all of those songs, and you can, as you're glancing through, you can see all of these pieces are using the black keys. The student comes back for the third week, and we're going to talk about this app, which we call IPS. It's the Interactive Practice Studio. This is where I start using it. And basically, the student is going to be able to practice with like this musical metronome, and I'm going to show you, this is my student organizing it here for herself. She was 6 years old when she was getting it together. She's using my phone.
With the accompaniments?
Yep. And then we just use a little speaker to play it. And let's try slower tempo. And let's put it on loop.
Wait, slower?
Mm-hmm.
Slower?
Mm-hmm.
And then what?
Mm-hmm.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, ready, sing.
Then we've got it on loop, so it's going to start you again.
1, 2, ready, play.
So what you can see is that basically the students will practice this over and over again without kind of having to tell them to do that. And yes. This is Android and? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So if you look again at the inside of your book, there's a code up here in the corner. And so with each book, there's a code. So the app is free. And you download it from either the App Store or like Google Play or wherever you would download anything. And you attach it to a book. So for you guys today, Kjos is giving you these books. If you decide that you want to keep this book for yourself as a reference and set this up on your own phone, play around with it and learn how to use it. Another option that we have when you go to the App Store and you go to the IPS is you can actually buy the book online. So if you are a teacher who travels to homes and you just want the book in your phone, and you would have the book and the media, and then you can give this book to a student. So kind of however you want to do that. But once that code is taken, you can't reuse it, just so you guys know that since you're getting the books. The next page here, Old MacDonald, this is like the last little pre-reading page using black keys. So now we're on to the third lesson plan, and I suggest going back and reviewing all of the songs that the students have learned before with their IPS, and then learning a few new pages. So beginning over here on 28, we're learning about the white keys on the piano. On page 30, we introduce here where C, D, and E are, and look at how short the little pieces are when they're starting to play, just 2 little measures. One of the things that we recommend here at the bottom of the page is to use naming white keys. And I think they sent that one. Is that in there, in that free packet, that little green book? These little books are really great, and they're working out really, really well with this series, because if you want any kind of reinforcement, it's nice. It's just a tiny little book to go along with it. And that first one is naming white keys, but we do have 12 books in the series, and we're actually writing a few more that'll come out this year as well. When my kids were probably between 8 and 10, we would travel every summer with them. And I was always looking for little books like that to take on the airplane that they could kind of color in and do that kind of thing. And I found this series of books at the time, which was math facts and spelling words and things like that. And I thought, this would be so great to have something like this for music, these little books that kids want to do, and there's games in them. And the thing that I really liked about those little books was that it was only one concept. So it wasn't like a huge workbook where every page they had to read tons of directions. So yes.
I've used those before just for working certificate of merit kids, and they need to target know, level 3 needs those rangy key signatures or whatever,
Right.
you know, and so it's been nice to not have to go to just one lesson, but theory book, when you use that little book and just target.
I know, and when I look at the way that I teach for Certificate of Merit, I don't know how many people do Certificate of Merit in here. Anybody else besides her? A few people. It's like they want you to teach like 3 key signatures in level 2, and it just doesn't always make sense to the child when they're learning, 3 exception, like key of C, then key of F, and so sometimes it's nice to get a picture of an entire concept while you're teaching, a little bit less. So these books, each one only covers one concept. And the idea is that the student gets this book and they just go to town with it. They don't have to ask you, how do I do this page? And typically, if you let them do it at the lesson or in the waiting room and you keep it at the studio, it's something that they really look forward to doing. So that's something that I recommend doing. Let's go over to page 33. Actually, let's go to 37, sorry. And I want to talk to you just a little bit about kind of a typical student. So this is my new little student. His name is Roshan. He started in October. He's super, super bright, in my opinion, and he's really hard. It's really, really difficult for me to get him to focus in. So I'm going to show you kind of a few of the things that we're working on and sort of how I'm trying to get him to focus in. To be honest, the IPS for him is not working great because when he gets the phone, that's it. He cannot come back to music. Just one sec. So I'm using the metronome with him. So I will tell you about that. Yes, and you have a question? He's 7. Okay, he's 7. And so, but I think he's just going to be an amazing student, and I am, being really patient with him. So this is typical of how somebody might look when they first come in.
Try to keep your fingers on the keys, touching all of your fingers. That's nice.
He's playing this piece, Mice in Motion. So the first time he played it, he memorized it. It's not about the music. It's just going to be about learning to use his hand. So we talked about going home that week, and I talked with his mom. She doesn't watch the lesson, but she helps him. And I said, this particular week, what I want you to try and do is to not let any of your fingers go up when you play one finger. And you're going to have to go pretty slowly to practice that. And we're not worried about legato or anything at this point.
E count.
Quarter, 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 quarter.
So he's just kind of trying to learn how to make a shape.
Nice.
And then this is him, this is typical. He'd be standing, he'll be doing whatever he's doing. So he has gotten through this book. We started in October, and then you could see we did a little Christmas Carol book. And I'm going to show you kind of where he is when we get up into the B book. But it takes a really, really long time to learn the piano learn how to play the piano for some kids. Maybe for some kids that's their forte. They can control their fingers, but musically they don't really get it. So this is more common for what I have. Somebody who is super smart, they play the music, they memorize it, they don't want to play it slowly, they never learn, it's hard for them to learn how to use their fingers. So that is something I just try to hone in on right away. Let's take a look at page 39.
E count.
Okay, one of the things that I recommend when you have these little written exercises is that you do them at the lesson. And this is one of the things that will help you break up the lesson. So I will just close the piano and let the student write. I don't know if it would work so well here. It works really well on my upright though, because it's literally like a table. But we do the writing at the lesson. So this is taking a few minutes.
Okay, and then open the piano.
And then here is the same page, and Lisa's going to show you how she teaches her student to move around on the piano. So this one is moving up and down between octaves.
What does this say? Right hand 1.
Begins on a middle G.
Can you find a middle G? Raise your right hand. Where's your finger number 1? Your thumb. Good. So put right hand 1 on the G and then open your whole hand. Ready? And then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to roll forward and move to the higher G. Okay? Ready? And quarter, quarter, rest. Quarter, quarter, let's do it again. Roll forward. Quarter, 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 rest. Quarter, quarter, now roll forward. Beautiful. And then your hand.
Okay, now let's take a look at page 42. And one of the things that you probably noticed going through the book so far is that, first of all, we start in these positions on black keys and then we move into white keys, but we really don't get into a specific hand position for quite a while. We're also using all different finger numbers on all different white keys, all different black keys, but we also do introduce formal hand positions, and the first one is introduced as middle C over here on page 42. The time signature is introduced on 43, and I will tell you, most of my students don't start counting 1, 2, 3, 4 for quite a while, but it depends. If they're 9 years old, they would start right away. So it depends on their age, but we just want to present what that is at that point. Okay, then I want to point out a technique page, 56 and 57. So the students probably, don't play legato right away, but at any point that you are ready, you can start to teach to play legato, and this is a really easy place because it's just using 2 and 3, and you can go really slowly, and it's a pattern piece. So that might be one place where you would want to introduce that. And then you can also talk a little bit about shaping the line, gradually play softer to the end. You can talk a little bit about that. And finally, I want to take you over to page 70 with Ode to Joy. And we're going to sing this one together, and I'm going to try and show you how I use the IPS with it. So I just click on the book that I'm on, and it'll give me the pages. And then I'll have something to play along with.
One, two, ready, play.
Beethoven wrote Ode to Joy. It's quite a famous melody. Sing, orchestra and voices sound in Beethoven's 9th Symphony. Beethoven, a man of genius, suffered from a hearing loss. Still he heard the music playing clearly in his thoughts. So that's just a really easy way to get started using an accompaniment. That was the basic tempo. I can do it slower.
2, ready, play.
And I can do it even slower. So I fought with my sister on this. She said that all the pieces in the A book sounded like dirges because I had the tempos going so slow, but this is basic for a 5-year-old. They can't go that fast. So we decided to try and make the fastest tempo, like a little bit in between a practice and performance tempo, but then make some really, really slow tempos as well. So, okay, so that takes your student through that first little book. And while, before we get into the B book, I would like to play through some of those pieces in the Valentine's Day book. So take that one out. And I wonder if somebody would just play the top parts with me, just the primer parts, the pre-reading parts. Somebody, anybody? Okay, thank you. Just bring your book because I don't have it. And then sing through with me. You'll see with my students, we are always either counting or singing, something to like hear what you're playing. Okay, let me scoot this up for you. I'm gonna put a chair in for me. Let's do Valentine Friends on page 5. Alrighty. Whew, low down here. Okay, ready, sing. Heart-shaped candies for my friends. Let's do it again. Ready, sing. Heart-shaped candies for my friends. That's good. Okay, and let's look at Grandma's Valentine. This is a fun one if you have a recital. This is cute when they invite their grandparent. Okay, 1, 2, ready, sing. Made a special heart-shaped box, painted red and with a lock. On one side it says, "Be mine." It's my grandma's Valentine. Nice. Yeah, that's a cute one. And the red roses on page 13. 1, 2, ready, sing. Red roses, roses for my mom. Red roses smell good all day long. Good. Good. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So it's fun to have like little supplementary books that you can present. So we always do Christmas, we might do Valentine's, and as we're going into learning to read notes, we continue with pre-reading materials. So my supplementary books at this point would all be in that pre-reading format pretty much all the way through that B book so that the pieces are still sounding good and they're fun. And I like it, almost all of our supplementary books are going to this format where there's a little bit of writing in them or coloring or something to help you break up the lesson. All right, so now let's take out the B book, Primer B. And I'll have you turn yours over to the back. Yes. Those are just like if you needed some help with figuring out which notes you were actually playing, just as a reference for the teacher. Yeah, 'cause since they're written in the pre-reading format. We used to do that for every book. We would write out the exact thing on the staff. Yes.
For the IPS, does each book have its own code?
Yeah.
So when they log in, it's where they look.
Yes. So each book has its own code. Myself, I just have all the books on my own phone so that when they come to me, we use it. And I'm going to actually show you how we use it at the lesson a little bit more as we get through this book. But basically, one thing I want to point out about this course is that we think that you have a choice. You could start with that A book, or you could skip that A book and start with the B book. And so let's say you had a 9-year-old and you don't want to do an entire book of pre-reading. You know, you don't have to. But I like having all that extra material to teach the students to learn how to play before they go into note reading. But that is an option. So you can go from the A book to the B book to the 1A and so forth, or you can just start right on the B book and go into 1A when you finish that. So we all had little parts, especially in these earlier books. My part was to write the lyrics for these books, and my sister has done all of the main outlining for all the course and kind of the general manager, and my mom wrote all of the accompaniments on these earlier levels. So that's why I'm really trying to point out all the different things that are going to help you teach the kids. One of the things that really helps is the lyrics, and another thing you'll notice is the art. So pretty much on every page, if you have time and really let the student look at a page, they're going to find a lot of things to discover. So we're going to start on page 8, and before I play through some of those with you, I want to show you at the bottom of that page. Do you see that little green highlight that we did where it says new note? At this point, I would definitely have my students get their own set of flashcards. So that is one thing that I would provide. And those are available in the second packet. You don't need to get them out now, but basically it's just a matter of learning to read one note at a time, learn the name of it, and then on the back of it, find where it is on the piano. So each time that we have a new note, you're going to see that section, new note, and you're going to see that you take out a flashcard to help the student practice that at home. All right, as we go through, sing with me. So here we go with middle C. Ready, sing. Middle C, I feel fine. I live here on my line. And then the next one. In a place not far from sea, neighbor pal D waves to me. Over on page 10, line note E, space note D, both are pals of middle C, in a row filled with glee. Listen to our melody. So we've learned 3 notes, C, D, and E, and then we start to play them in a little song, and a lot of the tunes that we wrote new lyrics to might just be folk tunes. So from the very beginning, they're starting to hear a lot of familiar tunes. Okay, so those are the flashcards that we talked about. And then I want to show you, ideally, once the students get going through the books, they will accumulate several flashcards. So they will accumulate up to 24 cards once they get through all the notes on the staff. And then they practice them on their own. And this is how I have them practice them initially.
A, C, D, F, G, C.
With the flashcards, we have all kinds of goals. So the first one that they try to do is to name the 24 notes in less than a minute. And we are with a timer, and they are practicing it at home, and they are really just trying to get the names of the notes down. That's the first thing, and we call that being in the 1 minute club. But from there, on my own, I do all kinds of other things. So I try to get them to do the set of ledger lines, in 30 seconds, and then to put the 24 cards with the ledger lines and try and get all of those in a minute. And then we have a thing, for where they have to play the note on the piano. So we really use those for a long, long period of time, and we try and, keep some kind of a goal going. We do a lot of that stuff during group lesson. And then let's look at page 14. We introduce the left-hand notes. Middle C, still feel fine, same old key, same old line. And then this one, Hey, be high up on your wall. Hang on tight so you don't fall. I have one of my students that started last year as a kindergartner is through this book and into 1A, and he's still not reading notes very well. So this last week, we got this book out, and I told him to go through now that he can, play, and go through all of these pieces, singing them again. And when he looked at this a year later, he was like, oh, sometimes it doesn't sink in right away, so you can go back to it. But I'm just really hoping that these little clues that we're giving them for reading notes will start to help them remember so that they're not constantly counting up and down for the first 5 years of lessons. That's my goal. Okay, page 16. This was a 9-year-old that I started last year. Okay. Okay, let's play that song now.
3 of us?
Yep. One, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Okay, and then let's look at page 19. Before we do, I just want to point one thing out. If you've noticed that my students, when they're writing, that they're using pens, have you guys noticed that? So one of my students gave me these amazing erasable pens a couple of years ago, and they're starting to get really popular now, but they are so fun to have in the studio, and they have them in markers and all different kinds of highlighters and pens, and I just keep them like on my piano, and that is one of the things that makes the students like to do their theory with me. They can use any color that they want, and they really erase well. They erase perfectly, like nothing left. So those are fun to teach with. Okay, I want to show you page 19 and talk to you just a little bit about using the metronome and sort of how we get started with it. So this is the same little boy, Roshan. We were just working on this the other day. I told you with him, the IPS, he is really I have never seen somebody so adept with a cell phone. So it just has been like every time he looks at my phone to find the IPS, it takes a lot of time, and that's the only kid that I've had that with. So for him, I'm with the metronome, and he's fine with that. But I teach them to set it up themselves.
Can we put it at 76, please?
Sure, 76 is good. Turn it on. 1, 2, you ready? Get your hands ready and count. Let's sing this time. Put your feet up. 1, 2.
Can I use the pedals, please?
No pedals. 1, 2, ready, sing. It takes time. It's gonna take him time, but we work on it every single week. Sometimes he's with the metronome, sometimes he's not with the metronome. We're singing, we're counting, and I just try and make it something that they know how to use, that they can put it on and do it at home. And then let's see him doing this one. Another thing that I really recommend is saying this: count yourself in. Okay, they need to learn to either, if the metronome's on, count one measure with the metronome, or if they're by themselves, just count in before they start. And that takes a lot of practice as well. No, before you play. 1, count yourself in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slow. Going up, going down. On your fingers. Nice. But in general, I'm going to show you this video one more time. This is what I find. The last time I did a workshop, probably about a month ago, I was talking to some students at Point Loma Nazarene, and they all said, how do you get the students to even, pay attention when they're 5 years old, and what are some tricks? This is basically the best trick that I know, is to start something and then just keep talking through them, because he's constantly talking to me and trying to think about something else, not on purpose, but no, before you play. 1, count yourself
2, 3, 4.
4. Slow. Going up, going down. On your fingers.
See the sights all over
Nice.
Okay, then I'm going to show you how I use the IPS in my studio right here in the room. So I need one more volunteer. Come up. Somebody help me. Help me, help me. Okay, come on. So normally this is how I sit. We're going to be on page 23. I usually sit here, and you're going to sit here. Okay. And we're going to have her play. Let's say she's been practicing this piece family time. And I'm going to have you play it for me. What's your first note?
A.
Okay. So let's count in 1, 2. Wait, before she starts to play. While she's playing, I'm kind of looking at this. I'm cueing it up. So I just want you to know what I'm doing. Okay, go ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2. Keep counting. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's do it with the IPS.
1,
2, ready, sing. Going to see my grandpa. How long has it been? And send uncles, all my cousins. I've been missing them. Okay, it's going to come again.
1, 2,
So
ready,
this is just something that really helps with continuity. And if you look at the next page, page 24, do a little bit of that one, snakes and lizards. 1, 2, ready, sing. Rattlesnakes rest, shed their skin. Okay, and let's say we're all the way through with that, and I'm not using this. And now, because I like to sit on this side, and the way my piano is, I don't know, do most of you guys sit over here, or do a lot of people sit on the left? I almost always sit on the right. I sit on the right. So, okay, let me play the duet with you. Okay, I need to move my chair. Oh, can you move up an octave? Do you see that this takes so much more time? And by this point, Roshan's over there. You know, so this is where I never, thank you. Thank you so much for helping me. I just want to point that out. I did not know I was going to be using this at my lesson. You know, I thought, oh, this is going to be so great. The students will practice with this. I'll still just want to play live with them. But it turned out to just be such a great tool that I'm using it all the time at the lesson. And it just keeps things moving. And what I find is that, like, he comes in every week and I'll say, like, you know, or any of the kids come in, oh, I love this song. I love this song. Because if they are doing this at home, then they're probably playing it over and over again. They're hearing the music and they're singing, you know, they're getting to know the pieces. So for me, it's sort of providing more continuity at an earlier point that I haven't had. Are there any questions about this at this point? Does this make sense? Yes.
Yeah, I have other methods that use the audio and stuff, but I find that I want to introduce it after they've played it through and
Yeah.
talked about everything. Otherwise, it's just kind of hunting and pecking and trying to figure out, you know.
That's a great point. And I would say have them practice it at home. You can always be sort of like on 2 points. New pieces, you don't use the IPS. And they don't really fight me on that because they really can't play with it when they don't know it. So then assign the pieces that they already know the next week, and then that'll be kind of like their fun stuff. Yeah.
But it's nice with the app because if you give them the CD, they'll listen to the whole CD and they'll say, oh, I want to play this song, jump around and not focus on one.
Yeah, it's definitely it's not a new concept, but it's just so much more accessible. That's what I'm finding. It's just like, oh, it's just right there. We just do this one piece, we go to the next thing. So yeah, so in the lesson, give it a try. One of the things that I tell the parents, when I told them on the first day, come in and look at the books with you and show them the IPS, tell them to get a speaker. So what the kids will do if they don't have a speaker is they'll put a headphone. They'll put a little earbud in there. That is so typical. That's just what they do. And they can't really hear the music that they're playing and hear all of this stuff. So if they're only using a phone, I don't think the volume on my phone is loud enough. My mom has this one really big iPad though, so something like that might be fine. It has a much bigger speaker, then she doesn't need a speaker. So just kind of try and help them with what they need. So, okay, let's go on to page 27. We have just a few
Before you play.
little performances of some of the kids playing and singing. So this is Lisa's student named Ella.
2, ready.
Cherry cola snow comes, lemon berry snow comes, mango melon snow comes, delicious snow comes.
And then let's look at 34, page 34. There's a lot of familiar favorites. Kids will always tell me, when I really started liking to play the piano was when I could actually play a piece I'd heard before. So try and put those in as soon as possible. And the accompaniments are really, really fun. Okay, and then let's take a look over at page 38. And on this page, this is one of my favorite illustrations, and I just want to say a quick word about the artist that we use for this series. The artist was the parent of one of Lisa's students in New York, and she taught their son for a long time, and actually both of the parents are artists. And when we got ready to look for a new artist, we had this woman, Yinghua, draw a picture. We had several artists draw a picture for Henry the Banana, that first little piece, and we liked her art the best. But since she lives in New York, she's spent a lot of time with my sister. She's really, really dedicated to trying to get, pictures that really mean something, that are beautiful, but that also really help present concepts. She will go over to my sister's house and have Lisa play the music for her so she can hear it, and she'll ask us about the concepts. This is one of my favorite pictures that she drew. It's a page about famous line note G, is one that you won't forever forget. And so she drew this famous cat with the paparazzi, and she's supposed to be modeled after Audrey Hepburn. And I think it's just one of her better pictures that I'll always remember, and it helps my students to remember that line note G. Let's look at page 45. So when my student helper came up to help me, I asked her, what note do you start on? And that's kind of how we have them finding positions with this starting point. Right hand 1 begins on C, left hand 2 begins on A. So we've been doing it that way all the way up to this point. Beginning over on page 46, we introduce the middle C position now for the first time. Surprise Symphony, page 49 is a fun one. And then let's take a look at page 64. This is probably, I think, one of the most useful exercises, and it's all the way through the theory boosters, it's all the way through this book, is really trying to help the student figure out where is this note on the keyboard. So here's Lisa working with one of her students.
So Nico, now that you've got all the letters written in, do you see that the C is right here on the key on middle C on the keyboard? Okay, what's the next letter name?
G.
Okay, now point to the G on your keyboard. Good. Now put a number 2 on that. Okay, great. So we can see that. Excellent. And then what's the next letter?
F.
Okay, now point to the F on your keyboard and put a number 3. Okay?
Okay, then I want to let you hear this page 65. This could be a nice first little recital piece. This is a little video of one of Lisa's students in a recital. Notice she's using the little pedal extender, and you can teach to use the pedal here for the first time. Okay, and then as we get through the end of this book, I just want to let you know these are the notes that we learn in this book. And then this is what we considered would be the most important thing for these first 2 levels, just to help the student learn to listen and make music from the very beginning. So I think we will take a break on that note. While you're getting out your next packet of books, I just thought I would tell you guys a little bit about the group lessons that I teach in my studio. So the main one that I do is this group once a week, and it is open to all of my students, except for the very youngest students. So I used to always do a few group lessons a week with like 3 to 6 kids, and I like the idea of the students coming for lessons twice a week. It's more in tune with sort of like the modern protocol, like they go to soccer practice, then they have a game. They go to baseball practice a couple times a week, then they have a game. So it's like the parents kind of want them to do some of their work with me. So I like them coming twice a week. And I used to have this group on Fridays where I had maybe 4 or 5 kids, and they were older siblings, and then all the other little siblings were waiting in the waiting room. My waiting room got so crowded, and the parents were in there, and I don't have that large of a waiting area, and I was kind of feeling overwhelmed with that. And all of a sudden, one of the little brothers said to me one day, "Well, that's okay, today I'm just going to sit in on the group lesson." And he was about 7 at the time, and I was like, "Oh, okay, what do you want to do?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just going to sit in the rocking chair and read." So I said, "Okay." So he just sat there, and he just like watched, and he was that type of a kid. And then the next week, a couple of the others, "Oh, we're just going to sit in." And I was like, "Okay," and I didn't have anything for them to do. They were just watching. They were reading books, watching. And so little by little, I started adding these little siblings to the group, and I started giving them little assignments. A lot of what I gave them initially was just those little theory boosters. And they just kind of went at their own pace and did their own thing. And then I started bringing in my older students to help me teach them. So it's been kind of like I'd say about a 4-year period, sort of getting this group going, but I consider it to be like a Montessori classroom. My kids went to Montessori school. They have different ages. They have kind of a lot of kids, but they're all sort of doing their own little thing. And it really connects the studio. It's really surprising how much the older kids love to work with the little ones. So let's take a look at what the group looks like. So just so you know, every week kids perform for each other. So we do a performance class pretty much every week. And it's not at all like everybody's, every once in a while I'll have everybody sit on the floor and watch somebody perform, but most of the time everybody is doing theory or they're coloring. They could be doing whatever they're doing. They're listening quietly. We play the piano together, not every week, but sometimes we put groups together. We do theory almost every single week. So we do it out of books, we do it out of games, we do ear training, and we do sight reading. So we don't do every one of those things every single time, but those are kind of the goals of the group. So this is kind of what the group looks like in a picture setting. some kids playing the piano, some kids working together. And this is not my whole group. There's a whole bunch of people that are sitting on the floor that you can't see. And then there's a whole other group of kids out in another room being taught by a student of mine. So this is kind of what it sounds like. It's a bit crazy. Does that give you any ideas? Yes.
So you said 25 students? How many of those on the average come to your group?
So we have 19 kids involved in this class, and we usually have anywhere between 12 and 19. They don't all show up every week. That's the other thing that I really like, is that if they don't show up, you know, you're not like taking an extra hour to teach 2 kids who didn't show up. It's always worthwhile. And do you get what I mean? Like when I used to have just 3 to 5 kids come, if 2 people were sick, then I felt like, oh, you know, I'm doing all this just for those few kids. Now it's like, it's a better use of my time. Yes?
Is it charged in the regular lesson fee or drop in and?
Nope, it's charged in the lesson fee. They don't have to come, so, but they can come, and it's the same fee, whether they come or don't come. Did you have a question in the back? Same one. Yeah, so has anyone ever incorporated group lessons before? If you have never incorporated them, just occasionally, do you do it like once every 6 weeks or?
Well, I do it at the end of the semester when they play for each other.
Yeah, like a performance class or something. I think anything that you're going to add to your studio, you add really gradually. So for me, you know, it's taken a long time to get this thing. I remember when I had a couple years ago, I told these kids that were coming on Wednesday, well, now I want you guys to come on Friday. I had to really talk to their parents. Like I talk to any change that I make, I usually like set it up in the spring for the fall. Look, next fall I've decided I've been teaching this group of 5 kids. They don't come every week. I want to put everybody on Friday. It's going to be a much better use. And then some of the parents are like, oh, well, we really don't want to be with little kids. You know, it takes some doing. So I take some time, I explain it, and then we try to implement it. If you've never really incorporated group lessons and you wanted to incorporate them, the easiest thing to do would be at some point wherever you break, let's say you break, most people break a little bit for summer because kids leave, and you say, look, next year I'm going to try this new policy, you know, on the 6th week of every lesson or every 2 months or however you want to do it, I'm going to do a group lesson, and on that week you don't have to come to your private lesson. We're just going to do group lessons every 6 weeks. I mean, you could do something simple. So you want to do it in a way that benefits you, but that you don't say to them, okay, in 6 weeks I'm going to have a group lesson and you need to pay extra for that. You know, then I think that's kind of like they think, oh, you know, maybe I don't need that. Or so you want to make it in such a way that it's benefit to you. Okay, so then on that 6th week, you plan, you know, maybe 2 group sessions, and you get people to come, and you, even if you just have a barbecue, or, you know, I don't know what you do performance class and a few theory games, and you try to organize it, and then you have almost a mini vacation because you're not teaching your private lessons that week. That's what some teachers have told me to get it started. And then if that goes well, then maybe a little bit later you say, look, I want to incorporate this into, you know, once a month or once every week or whatever, but little by little make changes to the studio. Yeah. Yes?
How long are these classes?
This class that I do is an hour. And again, that's changed. Like it was when we first started it, when I did the little classes, like a lot of those little sessions that I told you about at the beginning where you have the hour split up into 3 parts, you have the 2 partners, and then maybe the next year you can put 4 kids together for a little class or something like that. That's how a lot of my classes formed, and we only did those for 30 minutes when I started doing small groups. So then when I started adding kids into this lesson, 30 minutes wasn't nearly enough, so I moved it to 40 minutes. And then this year I moved it to an hour because I like to spend like 10 minutes letting the kids either play board games or play outside. So part of it's just social. So again, it was just very, very gradual, making friends. When we go to do recitals and performances, everybody knows each other. The families know each other. It is so much more comfortable for me because I don't like being in a, like recital, like that. To me, that is just like what I really want to avoid. So from the very, very beginning, I want all the kids to get to know each other if I can help that, Okay, so let's take a look, going into the 1A book. And let's take a look at page 8. So we talked about, just listening, learning to make music. I hope that by the end of the B book, my students are starting to play well, play legato. And here is where we talk about phrasing over on page 8. Here's an example of my sister teaching an easy way to teach this lifting motion.
Okay, Ella, today we're going to practice the lifting motion, okay? So let's do ready, roll forward, and then come right back down. Beautiful. Let's do it again. Fist, roll forward, and then come right back down. Excellent.
Yeah, so you just want to prepare them that at the end of a slur, they're going to lift their hand. The easiest way to teach this motion is by starting with a fist, loose fist, just to teach them to roll forward. If you say lift, they tend to lift in a very strange way that you don't want them to lift. So that is what we talk about there. Over on page 19, this book goes through the interval of a fifth. We're teaching fifths on 18 and 19, and I want to let you hear this little student now playing with the IPS again. Her name is Kayla. Hold up your hands. I think you need to press play again.
1, 2, ready, play.
Over on page 22, we also introduced the concept of staccato. And for little kids, I recommend that you teach them to just touch the key and push up. So it's a very easy motion to teach. So 1, touch, 2, touch. And it's much different from something like a wrist staccato, where you're doing this kind of a motion, but the first thing I like them to learn is just to make a short sound and to be in control of it. And even when they start having like left hand, they'll have much more control of making the left hand soft. So that's the way I teach staccato. Let's take a look over at page 30. The flat symbol is introduced here, and then the sharp over on page 32. And then this is a favorite piece, the can-can. This has been like a big recital piece. So my 9-year-old student that I started last year is such a good student, and he's doing great, but he was the first one I had in a really long time. He was nervous about playing in a recital. He wasn't in the big group, and he was 9 years old. And what I realized is I hardly ever, it had been a long time since I had started like he was in 4th grade. What I realized is that when I start them when they're 5, I have like 4 years before they even feel the slightest bit nervous. It's usually just such a big and like fun time. They invite all their grandparents, they all come to the recital. So what I do like to do is to have somebody like this play with an older student rather than play with me. So he got to know this kid and they rehearsed, and then it's a good experience for the older kid. And this is them rehearsing. Now you'll hear them rehearsing with the metronome, and they're rehearsing at our recital location. And then let's do page 36. Let's sing this one together.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2.
'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. When we find ourselves in the place just right, it will be in the valley of love and delight. And that's a fast one. So we have the slower ones, of course, the slower tempos. On page 42, notice this point where we introduce low notes on the step. This is always a challenge for my students. And even though we play the piano and we shouldn't be one of those instruments that only reads treble clef, a lot of my students still have a hard time reading the bass clef. I don't know what that is. So my sister and I talked about this a lot. What can we do, to make this introduction smooth and, hopefully that the students will really understand it. So what we decided to do was to introduce the notes a few at a time, just the G, A, and the B. And then notice when they start to playing the pieces, it's all left hand. Okay, so it's a lot of left hand. Now notice on this piece, the ostrich and the giraffe. The other thing we were going to do was to limit the intervals right away. So just seconds and thirds. So you can definitely go through, circle the skips, play the song. That was the first little piece. If you look at Long, Long Ago on page 45, same thing, super easy, just left hand. Good King Wenceslas on page 46, this was my suggestion, was that we would try to keep the right hand in a place that was familiar and move only the left hand. So that was the first time they played hands together. And then we introduce the right hand notes over on page 50. So not over, about 8 pages later, we introduce the top notes. And here are all the notes that the students learn in this level. And then let me show you page 62. I'll play this one for you. This is just another nice arrangement. There's just a lot of nice pieces, just, to be teaching and hearing. I don't know why mine isn't coming on right now, but it's just the theme. And then the accompaniment really easy. So if you do have an older student, we try to make the accompaniments not so hard that, they're just basically something to keep that sound good, but keep the rhythm going and make the music more interesting for the student. So I hope that you'll let your older students, start trying to accompany. Page 66, we have Take Me Out to the Ball Game. This is a favorite. People like that one a lot. And then I should just say the very end of each one of the books, we have these certificates that you can fill out and before they go on to their next book. Let's take a look at the flashcards now that you have those out. So if you open them up, you'll just kind of glance through. All of the notes on the staff are presented. Like I said, the answer is on the back and the exact location of where that is on the piano. And that's really the most important thing. So one of the things that I would do, somebody just pretend like they're timing me. Somebody say like ready, set, go.
Ready, set, go.
G, B, F, C, E, D, like, okay, that's the first thing I do. Try and learn the names of the notes quickly. Okay, that's the first thing. And if they can name these notes in a minute, then they know the names of the notes pretty well and they almost never forget them later. I mean, it's just like a starting point. The second thing is, one at a time, I want them to play the note and then check your answer. When they can do that pretty well, you know, all over the keyboard, I will line them up in just some random order, and we'll kind of do this throughout the lesson. Okay, E, okay, B, C, F, not in position. Just play the notes slowly. And then eventually I want them to get faster at playing the notes. And when I get to that point where I want them quick at playing the notes, I have another app that I want to share with you. And it's not a free app, and it's only available on the iPhone, okay, or the iOS. And after every single workshop, I call my publisher and I'm like, why are we only doing this for Apple? But if you do have Apple, even if you don't, most of the students will have an iPad. They'll have something. Somebody usually in the family will have one Apple product. But take out your 1B book and turn to the inside front cover and, or it's not the inside front cover, I'm sorry, it's page 2. So on page 2 at the bottom, do you guys see this pink bird icon? Bastien Piano Flashcards app. And so once my students can name the flashcards quickly, I use this app, and it has this sound recognition technology, and I'm going to show this a couple times.
Okay, Finn, now let's find your keyboard and then scroll to number 7, which is all the notes on the staff. 1, 2, ready, go.
Does anyone have any questions about that? Does that make sense? Should I show it again? It's an app that flashes the card and you play it on your keyboard, on your piano or on your keyboard, and it's pretty fair. One of the questions I get a lot is, what if your piano's out of tune? It's pretty lenient though. Like, my piano is out of tune a lot of the time because I teach in the garage and I tune it like 3 or 4 times a year, but whenever it gets super cold or super hot, it's not, you know, so it's still okay. But that has just been a huge, huge help in just quickly, you know, playing the notes on the piano. Yes?
Just the flashcards that are like this, notes, or?
So the good news is, it is all of the notes and ledger lines divided up into 17 levels. So you could do just bass clef notes, just treble clef notes, just bass clef line notes, so you can really, really drill. And the other thing is that the students make their own account. They buy this app. I think it's $3.99 at the App Store. They buy the app. They have their own login. They have an account, and they get points for each time, you know, and they get medals. And so it's like a video game. You know, they like it. It's an easy thing. I don't like using it as a way to teach the notes, mainly because it's too fast. It's got a lot going on. I like to actually teach it on the flashcards, and then once you feel like they're very proficient on their flashcards, then you can try it. Yes?
If there's one student in a home, they have their own account.
Right, how does that work?
Different emails, or they have to have
I'm not actually sure about that, to be honest. I should know that.
$5 per person.
Right, I don't know what it would be. You'd have to kind of have them look into that. I'm not sure about that. That's a good question. I'll try and look into that one. Yes?
You can call the office, they have tech support.
Call the Kjos office or call? Yeah, they do. They have a tech guy there. His name is Ryan. He'll help you.
He's really nice.
Yeah. Did you call him about the IPS or what?
Yes, I couldn't get it to load properly on my computer the first time.
And he helped you?
Yeah, I had to uninstall and restart, but it worked fine. It's fine.
Good. Good, good. Good, good. All right, so that's just another like fun way for learning notes. Let's go on in this book a little bit and take a look at page 9. Again, more with the left hand reading. And this is some kind of fun stuff that we might do in group lesson. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Page 20. More naming left-hand notes. Here's my student Maya working on this. Okay, so are you almost done with writing in your notes? Okay, get your hand position ready. Count yourself in.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1 and 2 and lift. Now a little crescendo. 1, 2 and lift. 1 and 2 and 3. Lift. 1, 2 and lift. Good. Yeah, good. And you can see at that point, I'm hoping that I have a student who can make a little crescendo, do nice phrasing. You know, those are all the things that we're working on that are not always written in the music. You know, it's something that I have to bring about when I feel it's time. Over on page 23, notice that we introduce, or 22, we introduce some of the higher notes. E, F, and G are introduced there, so we get to the top of the staff. And then over on page 30, for the first time, we introduce playing a chord. This is probably the biggest change in any Bastien method. We usually introduce the chord really early, and I still am a fan of that, but there have been so many teachers over the years who have told us they don't like introducing it right away, so we waited a little bit in this method. With the students that I want to introduce it to sooner, I just teach them how to play a chord. Sometimes we'll add a chord here and there just to get going with that. But initially, learning to play a chord is, it could be easy or it could be a challenge. The easiest thing is just to take, like, honestly, with a little teeny kid, a Q-tip. Take a Q-tip and put it under the second and fourth fingers. It's easier than a pen, it's easier than a pencil. It's just like the perfect size for a tiny hand, and play, you know, teach how this sounds. And then usually they can hold up 2, but they can't hold up 4. So again, with the Q-tip, just kind of work on that until they get that. Then on the very next page, notice right away, we're going to be playing hands together. And then most kids would probably play their chords really loud, right? So even the very first time that I'm teaching this, I would teach them how to balance. And, you know, it might take 2 years to perfect, but I talk about it every single week. Play the left hand quietly on its own, and then add the right hand on top of it, but separately. And then put them a little closer until finally you can try it together and try to hear that right hand louder than the left hand. You know, counting out loud, or, you know, playing with good balance, using a good hand position, playing with a metronome, all of those things are really, like, if somebody raises their hand and says, you know, like, how do you get your students to count aloud? It's like I went to the doctor the other day and I said, I'm still really hot all the time. Can you please give me some advice? And she goes, have you thought about wearing layers? And I was like, oh, that could be an easy one. I mean, it's like there really is no solution. It's like If you're hot, you probably need to wear less clothing. If you're not counting aloud, you probably need to start counting, but it's so hard to get it done. So with those really big challenges, so that we don't teach students who never learn these important concepts, we need to give them like an extra push. It could be anything that you need that works for you, but a really simple one for me has been to use this music money. I pay my students for almost everything, and this is really cute. This music money is a Kjos product, and it has like composers, and I think it has 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s. And so they save up money in the studio for all different kinds of things. So let's say this week I taught them the balance, and then in their assignment book I would write down, I want you to practice just playing that one note, with the chord, not playing straight through the piece. I don't even want you to learn the piece this week. I just want you to see if you can make the right hand louder, and I want you to show me how you practice that next week, and that's going to be worth $50. Whatever I need it to be. Like next week, it works all the way up through high school. I mean, literally, it's like, okay, I need you to get your sonatina learned next week by memory. It's going to be a giant bonus. You're going to get $500. It doesn't matter what it is, but they like to collect money. And then usually about 4 times a year, I open a student store and they can spend their money. And so it's pretty interesting with little kids. They learn how to count with me. They like 5, 10, 15, 20. So it's just kind of a fun little thing. I know a lot of the teachers do it at school, so some of the things that we sell in the stores. Oh, I wanted you guys to see my mom's studio. So my mom still teaches. She's 82, and she still teaches every single day. And this is her studio, and she does the student store too. And this is, my sister gives her students little envelopes, and they decorate the envelopes, and they keep their money, and she keeps their money for them at the studio so that they don't lose it or forget it. She files it. And then this is an example of her store. She does stuffed animals, I guess, and little composer busts. She does it in such a way that she makes the prices really high, and she keeps the store out all the time, and they save up until they get this one thing, and then she gives it to them. I just set out the store, like I said, 4 times a year. They can either spend or save. They don't know what's coming, and then I put it away. Because that, for me, it's a lot when you've got that stuff out all the time. This is an example of my store. The pens are just a huge hit. So I'll get packages of those, and some of the time they can either buy the whole package, which they really love, or they can buy them individually. I'll set some out. I also try to find something that they can't buy. And this is one of my little students makes these little crocheted animals. And they're such a hit. This little boy, he's just so talented. He just doesn't use a pattern or anything. He just makes those. So I've been buying those from him and selling those. So something that they can't get. The other thing I used to do, and I did more of it in years past, but I am a big fan of going to estate sales and garage sales, and I would go on the 3rd day, and I have this app on my phone. It's called estatesales.net, and just for fun, because I'm kind of a antique person and everything, I just kind of flip through the pictures, and if I see like a good sale where somebody has a huge collection of bells or something, it's not going to be something that anyone's probably going to buy. I just go on the last day and buy the entire collection, and it's like practically free. So that was another place where I got a lot of prizes. And then it's interesting to the kids. It's like, oh, I drove out to El Cajon and I had to go in this little house. I try and make it so it's not like, oh, we saw that at Target when we walked in, It's not all just the basic stuff. So, but that's probably the best motivating little incentive program that we have ever had in our studio. And I saw a workshop on the music money a long time ago, probably, 15 years ago. And at the workshop, it was so cute. We came in, and this woman that was presenting it just had this wad of cash in her hand, this music cash. And she'd be like, oh, you sat in the front row? $5. It was a really fun presentation. And she was like, okay, I need to know blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, oh, first hand in the air. She made it really fun. And she said that she does it auctions, you know, like at the group, like let's say you're putting together a group thing and people save their money and you want to do something really, she would auction things off. And so you can make it really fun. Okay, page 41. In here is an interesting little piece, and I like to show this one. This is Kayla again playing with the accompaniment, and listen to how she's starting to sound at this point. So I think one of the things that really helped her was playing slowly. And that's probably another thing, you know, that we try, you know, slow down, play slowly. But to find some way to actually make them slow down is either the metronome or the app. Those are my two ways. And this is just something my mom has always told me: practice slow, learn fast, practice fast, learn slow. And if you can keep the kids playing slow for as long as possible, all of a sudden they can play really fast. That's been my experience for many, many years. Okay, the last sort of concept that's introduced in this book is the key of F over on page 62. And the key signature is introduced. So that's sort of the end of that. I think by the time the students are playing at this level, they have this as their main method book. They definitely have other supplementary things going on. They could have a folk tune book. They could have a recital piece going on. They could even be starting, you know, Bach Minuet in G as a challenge piece. As a general rule, once my students learn to read well, I like to assign 3 levels of music at every single lesson. So one of their pieces or one of their levels is a challenge piece. One of the material levels is their method book level, just sort of learning new concepts, but not quickly, just gradually. And then the third level is something that's way easier than their level. And if you can keep all of that assigned and going, then you really develop a good reader. I think the one thing that I've noticed over the years that parents don't understand is that it takes a lot of music to go through before you become a good reader. But they do understand that when you talk to them about reading books, right? Because every kid, you know, is in school 8 hours a day learning to read, and you know, it's constant, and then eventually they learn to read. But if they're just playing one song over and over again, they're going to memorize that piece, and then they go to the next piece, and it's like they have to start over again with reading. So to keep the 3 levels going, to keep the flashcards going, to keep the workbooks going, to keep all that stuff going, I would say over a good 3 to 5 year period, that is really how I develop reading. Just little by little, week by week, constantly. And I don't have to hear that easier level all the time. What I like is, you know, the students who practice, if they practice 30 to 40 minutes a day, which some of them do and some of them don't, they have time, you know, to do stuff for fun. And that is when it's fun, is when they pick it up and they're like, oh, this is so easy. You know, that to them is fun. It's not like,
Use a piece from their book, or do you give them something?
I have so many books going typically. So this would be their method book. And then, like I said, if I'm going to do any supplementary books, which to me is like anything that's not in your method, so it would be like folk tunes, or it could be Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever season you're on, I would pick the lower level. So I would pick primer level. Instead of picking level 1 supplementary, I would pick the easier level, 1 level below. Yeah. And then for the challenge, that could be wherever you think they are. Like, you know, if you think you want them to work on a piece for 2 months, maybe it's going to be Echoes A and G, you know, so maybe it's going to be quite a bit harder than this. So, okay, and then we have the 2B book, right? Or 2A. in there. I'll show you quickly. And then just so you know, what we have available with the method so far is all the way up to 3A, although it looks like maybe we don't have any more in the back. Do we have any more back there? Did people buy them at the break? Anyway, we have up to 3A. In your packets, we have up to 2A, and then we have 2B and 3A. They should be back there, just so you know that. And then 3B should be coming out this spring. It's coming out in the spring, and then the last two levels, 4A and 4B, will be out sometime next year. So, a lot of students get to level 2, and that's where they remain for a very, very, very long time. Some people never graduate from level 2, and there's a lot of music that you can play. You know, they can play an accompaniment, they can play chords. So, what we tried to do with this level was to keep the concepts coming slowly, but make the music interesting, especially for those students who these were going to be sort of like their performance pieces, because I think we all have those students. They want to continue coming to piano. They don't practice a lot, but they're still having a good time, you know, so I want them to have music to play that they like. So let's say, for example, page 9. We have a lot of pedal pieces that are easy. So just easy but sound nice. That's kind of what we were going for. Page 12, we still have the left hand being used a lot, and we start to introduce some ledger lines. So just like fun little riffs for them to learn. Page 28 in here. Here's another one that I like to play, Sunset in Sedona. Okay, and then let's take a look at page 58 in here. We introduce scales at this point, and then just kind of the last thing I want to point out as a helper, if you look over at page 59, we will have a red finger number placed to remind you of an accidental, and that goes on through 2B and 3A, going up, learning the scales. So it's kind of a good helper. It's not like an actual writing the flat in. It's just kind of something in between that I've liked that. And then we have over 70 and 71. Like they're really good pieces in the key of F. That's what I'm noticing. My students are learning to play. Easy, but they're fun. So that's kind of the key of F. And then in 2B, which we don't have in the packets, but we have in the back, they're going to be learning to play in D, A, and E. So we're going to be still doing that gradual multi-key. Through the level 3, they're going to learn D flat, A flat, E flat, and then level 4, G flat, B flat, and B. So it's similar to all of our other Bastien books. Okay, and then let me play through a couple of the Valentine pieces in that package. I need to borrow one. Can you hand me one from back there? Oh, the Valentine book, or in that packet, so that they can look at their own. This is kind of an older book. My mom wrote this book years ago. I use it. I still love it. She came up with the idea that she wanted a book of holiday pieces that weren't all at the same level. So there's some in primer level, there's some in level 1, and there's some for level 2. And so you could give this book out maybe after like a year or a year and a half of lessons and teach maybe the first 2 songs and then just put it away, and then the next year have them get it out again. And we always do a little recital. So one of my favorite ones is the first one. Let's sing this one together. 1, 2, ready, sing. If you said to me today, let's be Valentines, I would answer with a hey, that would be just fine. Valentines, Valentines, let's be Valentines. Valentines, Valentines, let's be Valentines. And then it just has a little simple ending. But I like these pieces, they're melodic. You can teach how to play a nice line. Another one that's nice, page 12, a little bit harder. So since we were talking a little bit about, what kind of this is a great example of a supplementary book, something that you're going to bring out just for a holiday. You can either bring it out on the easy side, or since these are such nice solos, you could bring this out as a challenge piece. So you could kind of decide. I wanted to share just a couple of other teaching ideas with you. One of which is the assignment book, this Bastien assignment book. And this, I'm going to give you the number of it. I think it is KP, I think it's KP50, KP50. I have to look that up. This is a great assignment book, and every student has an assignment book. And I have them bring it to every lesson, and I just write down everything that they need to do. And you can't see it on this one because I took the picture before that was the assignment for that week, but I do give a grade at the end of every week, especially for those students that are in middle school and high school, because if I don't do that, it's the first thing that goes when they have tests and everything. They just kind of don't practice. So I'm not super rigid about it, and they can always make up their grade. I almost never give a grade that's not that's not lower than a B. I just don't. If they really haven't practiced it all, then I will make it a positive thing. Like next week, let's really get back to it. I want to be able to give you a really good grade, and you can get a double grade. So it's not meant to be a negative thing. It's meant to be a positive thing that hopefully will keep them practicing, but the assignment book does that for me. And then I just feel like you learn things from wherever you go. And I learned so much about teaching from my son's tennis coach. I actually really liked this idea that he had where he does a lot of work with back-to-back lessons. So when my son started taking lessons, he was 5. The other boy was about 14. That little boy would have to meet Riley and work with him a little bit every single week. It would take like 5 minutes. And at that time, the 14-year-old or the coach, or the 14-year-old's mom or the coach or me would be picking up the tennis balls that are all over the court. So he just had that in a rhythm, and then Riley always had like this kind of role model. If it's kids the same age, he finds some little game for them to do together. So that was where I started doing that. These 2 kids started with me when they were 5 and 6, and now this is actually a video of them when they were in 9th and 10th grade, and they play duets together all the time. They happen to be neighbors, and they started together, and now one of them's a senior in high school, one of them's a junior, and their mom just told me that over Christmas they got together. They got out all their old duets, starting with Round and Round by Lynn Freeman Olsen, and they played them all at Christmas. And it's just, just because they had back-to-back lessons, we did this together. We would do duets. Level 1. I use a lot of my mom's duet books. One of them is called Duet Favorites. It's like a turquoise book. And the other one that she has is called, it's purple, and it's called like Duets for Fun, I think. One of them is called Duets for Fun, and one of them is called Duet Favorites. I can't remember which. And then I love Robert Vandal duets and trios. Robert Vandal. That's actually an Alfred publication. All of his duets are amazing too, and they're not so low leveled to the level 1, but for a little bit older. Then this is the last thing that I'm going to leave you with today. One of the things that I have had the most fun with, and I've been doing a lot of it lately because I do have a lot of middle school and high school students, is teaching them how to teach. And I always used to do just like a little, class, like I would give them my father's pedagogy textbook, How to Teach Piano Successfully, and we would go through it, and we would talk about the business of teaching. We would just sort of talk about setting up a studio, and I have them make a flyer, and they try to get a student, and they try to learn. But now that I have this class on Friday, it's great. That's a great place for them to learn to teach. And then just the most basic thing from watching that tennis coach is that I started having the kids work together for 5 minutes, before the next one starts their lesson. So I told this boy, Aiden, this older boy, that I was going to videotape him. And he said, I don't even know what to say. This is embarrassing. And I said, well, just try it. Let's just try it. So the first time he did it, he was like this. 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now tell him, imitate me. You say to him, imitate me.
Imitate me.
I did it. What?
He just looks like mortified. So that was the only thing I taped. And then even as that day went on, he got really into it. And then the next week he comes back. And so this younger boy, he has this lesson right before Aiden. So.
Okay, so the D is probably the loudest note that you're going to do, and then the B is going to be the softest. Like, the G would be the second softest, and then D is going to be the loudest, and then the B is going to be the softest.
So just go D,
so it'd be
B.
like, just pretend like dropping there. Yeah, but you also kind of want to shape the D too, so you kind of want to go like. Yeah, and then kind of make like a lift, like. Yeah.
It's funny, I don't know if I would have spent that much time on that, So then the next week, he comes in.
Soft. But then
He's got his pen,
so
he's like writing in his music.
I think, right? And then you could do the same thing. Like this, you go like this. And then you could, so you would go like. Yeah, so you would kind of do the same thing as like, what was it? You do the exact same thing there. And then.
So I found that to be really, really interesting. So I wanted to share that and recommend that. Are there any questions about anything else before we wrap up today? Yes?
So you have the piano party grouping,
I have this, say it again.
the piano party books.
Yes.
They're very young. So
Yes.
I'm saying that, is this just a little bit older? Because I have some students that right now are in piano party, but they have some developmental issues. So I'm thinking, instead of restarting or doing something different, that I could.
These, I think, in a lot of ways, are way easier than the piano party books. Even though the piano party books are for a preschool, like they stay in pre-reading longer, they have like 2 books of pre-reading and everything, but they are hard physically.
Got the chords.
Yeah.
There's pattern, she's like stuck on it.
Right, so just switch her over to this. This is way easy. And sometimes if you do have something where you're stuck, if I ever get stuck in any book, regardless of what it is, you want to move laterally, you just want to move to something about the same level, and then you'll go back to that, you know, to that other one, and you can keep things going at the same time. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys all so much for coming out. It's been such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.